Some rights. And so I had my response to that was some rights for this one.
Okay. I will turn the camera around and point it at the flag.
Okay, you can turn the camera around and point it at the flag. Yep. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would you please stand and join me in the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Okay, so make sure that you sign in, or at some point Heather have a document so that she knows who's here. We also have 12 participants on Zoom. It will be an interesting process as we work through this, thanks to the COVID virus. So, but I promise you, in true Crook County style, we're going to do it. We'll do it well. Introductions. Why don't we just start over here with Richard from BLRB and state who you are, and we'll just go around the room real quick so everybody knows who's there.
Thank you. It's Richard Higgins with BLRB Architects, and we're thrilled to be here with you. Great turnout, great committee.
I'm Heidi Slaybaugh with BLRB Architects.
Joel Hoff, Assistant Superintendent.
Michael Allen, Tech Director.
Heather Hickson, I'm the Executive Assistant to the Superintendent.
Mark Flegel, Community Member.
I'm Rob Bonner, one of the Assistant Principals and Athletic Director.
Kimberly Bonner, I'm the principal at Crooked River Elementary.
Jeff Kaufman, School Resource Officer for Prineville PD.
Adam Stefanik, the Assistant Principal, Crooked River Elementary.
Don Hammond, I'm the building engineer here at the high school.
Stacy Smith, Curriculum Director.
Natalie Eberhard, teacher here at the high school and online.
Sarah Johnson, Superintendent.
Renee Tooley, community member.
Dave Fields, retired Deputy State Fire Marshal.
Leland Bliss, Director of Facilities and Safety.
Dwayne Yeka, retired. And I'm Doug Smith. I'm a school board member and a grandparent of a student at Steens Pillar. As we go through this, we'd like. Oh, center table, excuse me.
Just because he knows it.
Steve Holiday, community member.
Scott Smith, Street Superintendent for the City of Prineville.
Steve Uffelman, Prineville City Council.
Jason Carr, Communications Director.
Okay, that's everybody, I believe. Nope, we've got one that joined us.
Hello, I'm Alex Molina, student at Crook County High School.
Okay, as we go through this, I'm sure there's a lot of questions, and we will, if you have a question, raise your hand and we will get the microphone to you so that you can speak. If you have questions between meetings you want answers to, or want to know something prior to the next meeting, you can email those to either Leland, Dr. Johnson, Heather Hickson, or myself, and we will make sure that we get share the questions and the answers with all the members within the group. Wynn Carr is another board member, and she will be joining us as soon as she gets here from a meeting in Bend. There's going to be 6 meetings. Through that process, we're going to work from tonight where we start talking about the facilities that we have and what is right with them, what repairs and help they need, to arriving, we'll review the Portland State University projections for growth in our area. What we will then work through the process, and BLRB will lead that process, but the goal is that by August, we will have developed a solution and present that solution to the board of directors of the school district. Okay, it also drives what's known as an awesome grant. Sure, we can do that. Go ahead.
Right. So for those of you online, we want to do a quick introduction. So I'll just call out by the order that I see on the screen. So we'll start first with Pete.
Pete Goodrich, Pioneer High School.
We'll go with Jim.
Jim Bates, principal at Steens Pillar Brothers in Paulina.
The Klons.
Hi, I'm Eric Klon, city engineer.
Hi, I'm Sarah Klon. I'm the academic coach at Steens Pillar Elementary.
Mr. Brummer.
Yes, Jerry Brummer, Crook County Commissioner. Thank you.
Anna.
I am Anna Logan, Chief Financial Officer for Crook County School District.
I see V Ryan.
Hi, I'm Vicki Ryan. I'm with Crook County Public Health.
Okay, Michael and Heather are in the room. Marcus. Marcus, are you there? Okay, so Marcus Hayes is our assistant principal at the middle school. Susan.
Hi, Susan Crawford. I'm a CPA in town, and then I have 2 daughters at Steens Pillar and 1 at Crooked River. And I do want to apologize. I'm only going to be able to join you for the first part of this meeting. I was double booked tonight, but I do intend to watch the whole recorded video once it's posted.
And then lastly, Kelsey.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Lucas. I'm the Economic Development Director for Crook County.
Okay, did I miss anybody else online that I didn't call out? Okay, back to Mr. Smith.
So one of the questions that came up was minutes and notes. So Heather Hickson is taking minutes of the meetings, and those will be shared as soon as they're completed with all members on the committee. We'll share them by email. BLRB has done an extensive review of our facilities, and they will be talking about them tonight. We'll also spend some time during this process reviewing the educational requirements of 2021 and beyond. And they're somewhat different, for instance, than maybe what we looked at 10 years ago when we were talking about building Barnes Butte Elementary. So we'll be spending some time at it. We'll also look at the anticipated growth of the district and how does that play into it. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays into it and what that really is going to look like, because enrollments have been shuffled everywhere because of COVID. And Crook County now has a homeschool program, an online school. We have really more students. We're the only district, I believe, in Central Oregon that has more students than when we went into lockdown back in March. But they're in different places. Not all of them are in brick and mortar schools. So we're going to have to, as a committee, take that into consideration. The goal is to end up with a finalized solution approved by the board, submitted to the Oregon Department of Education in September. And what that can do for our district is, if we pass a bond, if we recommend a bond, if the board then says, yes, we want a bond, we apply for what they call an awesome grant, which is a school and facilities improvement bond or grant from the state, that if we pass it will generate at least an additional $4 million for our construction project. So if we ask for $10 million from the voters, we would actually have 14 million to spend, okay, to improve our facilities. And with the cost of a sheet of plywood today, that's probably well needed. We have a lot to do in the next few months, and COVID's going to add a layer of difficulty on it. We will be working on a tour, maybe a tour of the facilities that are in most need of repair, but we're talking about doing that in the form of a video tour and utilizing local talent, Mr. Carr, and maybe a local photography company called Olive and Blue to help us get that tour done, so that we can sit and look at it and share it not only with the members of the committee, but maybe the members of the public later on, if we do decide on a bond and have to convince them that there's issues with our buildings as well. The other thing I'd like to say is that you're going to, the list that BLRB put together is the list as of February, March timeframe of this year. And so Leland, who's our facilities manager, is constantly improving and taking care of things that are on that list. So it may be that you're going to hear, well, that has already been funded and done by the district, because our district is very good at trying to take care of the facilities that the public has trusted us with. And you're also going to hear of some projects that are in process that are using some federal monies that came in the form of grants earlier this year. Okay, so some of that stuff you're going to already be hearing about, some things that are going on. With that, I just want to say, if you have questions, raise your hand. We'll get you the microphone. We want your input. We want it to be open. It's your meeting to take where we want it, but we also know that we have a certain amount of time to get things done, and so we'll get on with the show. So I'm going to turn it over to Richard and Heidi from BLRB, and they'll lead the rest of this meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you all for being here and joining us. Again, I'm Heidi Slabaugh from BLRB Architects. My colleague Richard and I, we have both been doing long-range facility planning and facility assessments for quite some time. Richard's been doing them longer. But we're happy to be here. We did the facility assessment for Crook County Schools back in 2015. Not me particularly, but our firm did. So it was fun to get back out here and see how things have improved, or on the contrary, over the last couple of years. And so what they're passing out right now is a copy of the facility assessment report. What we did with a group of ourselves as architects, our mechanical and electrical engineers, as well as our civil engineer, came out and did an extensive assessment of each of the facilities. And this assessment is a snapshot in time. It's not looking at what are the dreams and aspirations of these places, what has happened in the past. It's literally just looking at what are the conditions right now as these buildings stand. And so from ODE, the Oregon Department of Education puts together a spreadsheet that we use so that every school district throughout the state is now being evaluated on the same merits. When we did it in 2015, it was based on what BLRB has done for 20, 30 years of looking at schools. And so since then, ODE has come up and streamlined a process and has done a certification process for us as assessors so that they know the information that they're getting. We can compare apples to apples throughout the state. They also assign a cost figure to each of the repairs, and that is based on the region that the school districts are in, based on specifically the county. And so it does reflect that, lumber is, well, it doesn't reflect current, what Doug was alluding to, fluctuations of lumber, but it does, look at what is your labor force, how far do people have to travel, so a school district out in Eastern, let's say we're just looking at Brothers, is going to be significantly different than a school district up in Portland with maybe greater access to materials, labor force, etc. And then sometimes it's the completely opposite, right? It's the Eastern Oregon, we finally get an advantage. So that's what this report is. And what it does at the end of the report, we look at what are all the list of items that need to be repaired. Is that okay? Okay. Versus what does it take to replace this facility? And so that gives us a number that we look at. It's called an FCI. Is this in our, okay. So I guess we can, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. You know how far I was going off of. We have pretty slides to show to go along with what I'm saying. So what it does is it gives us a facility condition index number that compares that replacement cost to a repair cost. And that's in that executive summary in the beginning of the reports that just kind of gives you a number, and then it's an easy number to kind of keep in mind for the rest of comparisons to all of your buildings when you're looking at the buildings in comparison. As long as they can see it on the screen too. Okay. I just jumped right into talking about what was being passed out. So yeah, let's get going. Well, I'll just keep talking while you're getting that pulled up. So tonight we're not addressing necessarily what's in the report because we're starting the next phase of it, which is called the long range facility plan. It's obviously growing off of the information that's in this report to help prioritize what we need to be focusing on and doing. So this is our goal for our portion of tonight's agenda, is to talk about the goals and objectives of what you need to get out of this long range facility plan. Doug mentioned a couple. Want to qualify for the awesome grant. That's pretty substantial. And then we go through what our process is itself. And then what I was already talking about, the facility condition index itself. We also will give you an update on what we call, what ODE calls the educational adequacy. And so we have talked with a number of the schools and staff at each of the schools to kind of do a little, it's more of that touchy-feely side of the schools. We can look at, the light fixtures and the ceiling panels and the floor condition, but we need to know from staff, the people who live and work in these buildings, how those buildings function for them. What goes on inside those buildings is stuff that we as assessors can't do with just looking at the inside and outside. And then we do wows and wonders at the end. We just like to hear from everybody. That's what wow, what did you learn? Hopefully you learned something from us. We're not educators. Well, we're educators in our own sense, right? And then, as mentioned before, we do have a number of meetings. It's ideal if hopefully we don't scare you off, you will come back to the next meeting and the following meetings, because it's best if we keep the same participants in to help build off of what we're doing in each meeting. So our next meeting is on May 26th. Any questions on my agenda? Our agenda? Okay. So we were talking, the first thing, sorry that I skipped ahead to that report. It was, it's fun to see the reports being distributed. But some of the goals and objectives that we had talked to school district staff about, and Doug was at that meeting, and I'm trying to remember who. I know Joel was at the meeting. Well, yes. And Leland too. Kind of some big picture ideas. One, like I mentioned before, to qualify for the Awesome Grant. Develop a facility plan that meets the instructional needs now and then for in the future, right? What do we need to keep going, to keep educating and providing great citizens in our community? And then a facility plan that addresses population and enrollment growth. If there are other ideas, we'd love to hear them. We are not limited to only 3 goals and objectives. Some school districts grow up to 5 or 6. So open for conversation if there's other things that are on your mind, and maybe we circle back to this at the end of our meeting and you go, oh, I really think this is super important that we make this one of our goals. So just keep that in mind, that anything here is flexible, and we want to hear from you. This is our first meeting with you, so we're not dictating what your goals are. These are your goals, your objectives, your process. We're just here to help facilitate it. Okay. All right. So the process itself, this comes from ODE, the mission to provide healthy, safe, warm school facilities for Oregon students. And there are goals to go along with that. Might have made it big enough to read. Provide districts with a list of qualified individuals that can provide accurate, detailed building of the deficiencies. So that's what I was saying, that Richard and I are certified assessors in order to make sure that everybody across the state is reviewing and assessing their facilities in the same manner. Provide the state with uniform, accurate data. I already said all this. How about that? Okay. The process, again, since they streamlined the process so that everybody's doing it, we all have our own ways of presenting it and doing it, but the goals are listed out here, the requirements. We're collaborating with local governments, so really happy to see some of our big partners here tonight. We're looking at population and enrollment projections. There's a couple different ways that we do that. Getting community involvement. So kudos to you guys. We're all here. We're doing it. Thank you. We look at historic building information that gives the state part of their inventory, just like ODE gets an inventory of all of the facilities. Part of this process goes to the State Historic Preservation Office and says, what are potentially historic or eligible historic buildings that are out there? Kind of helps their inventory process. We do an educational adequacy. I started talking a little bit about that as we've done a little bit with some of the facilities so far. We'll get into that more. And then the goal, the end of it is we develop a 10-year plan. And if anybody's done a strategic plan or a facility plan, 10 years sounds great, but ideally we're looking at these every 2 to 3 years and updating them along the way. Any questions on? Fantastic. Here we go. You can dance with me anytime you want.
So here, actually, we're going to make this easier. We've got our own. What are these? Run out of ports. So
You might have to just push.
Oh, squeeze it in.
Okay. All right, you want to go?
Oh,
Go
we can
for
do it together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that stand up?
It does. It does. How about that?
Better we can do this. What this chart is, first off, your broad range of
You got to stand over here by the mic.
It's a duet.
Yeah, I'm shorter than you,
Yeah.
so they can see you. over
So the broad spectrum of inclusion of other entities and governmental agencies is tremendous. That's actually one of the requirements and one of the goals that I'll touch upon. But first, this is kind of a chart of what the state wants in terms of participants. And of course, you know, your key players, there's on one side is the importance, the other is the influence. You want those people in the upper right-hand corner are your key players that not only are really important to the schools district, but also are influencers in the community. But you also need the bystanders. They're really an important element to the community also in passing a bond. So they really are suggesting a broad range of inclusion. I think this is working. If not, would you just advance it?
I can.
There you go.
I got that technology
Okay.
down.
So there's the population and enrollment.
Go for it.
Okay,
You like talking about this one.
I do. So you've had experience with Portland State University's information, but it is what is available. Over the last few years, Portland State has been commissioned by the state to update every region of the state on a rotating basis to give the latest data and projections on growth. So that's one metric that we're going to use in giving you some information about where is the enrollment trends going that are based on population. There's other sources. The county, the city may have done some housing studies recently that integrated a population and growth metric or had some information. We'd love to get a hold of that. Another one is cohort survival. It is a metric where you take last 6 years of enrollment in the school district, grade by grade, and you see the cohort that goes from first grade to second grade to third grade to the fourth, how they flow through the system. And so you're essentially taking what is this last 6 years and interpolating it out another 10 years. Of course, you have to know how many kids are coming into the school district. That's what we do, but we take the birth rates in the county, and you have a certain percentage of the birth rate that actually enroll in your kindergarten. So we take 5 years, average that, and that's the metric that we use for new children coming into the system. It is math. It is simple math. It's one piece that really gives you some information about the enrollment trends over the last 6 years, and if you just interpolate it out in the future. So the instructions from ODE is make it flexible. Look at that. Why don't you take that one?
Okay. Collaboration with local governments. So I was started to talk about that a little bit. So just knowing that there's all sorts of different players who are affected by how we educate and what we educate our students in, right? So we're also looking at different local government agencies or local agencies, community gathering, stumbling over words like Parks and Rec, people who use your facilities. So we're having a meeting in the high school, right? I know the Commons is well used as a meeting place. The auditorium is well used. So who are those key players who not only care about what the future of the students are doing in our community, but care about using the facilities and what type of facilities are out there?
Yep. So we will need to put a statement into, this is all the requirements from ODE. When they review the report, it must include these elements. So that's why we're checking them all. This is primarily needed when you're looking for adding number of schools. Probably doesn't apply. I haven't done the process with you, so I don't know. Probably doesn't apply, but we still need to kind of check the box and make a statement that other entities, taxing entities in the area have been contacted. And so I love this one right here, which is useful to avoid duplication of efforts. So that's really what this is. relative to most of the school districts with whom we work. Look at that. Now you get this one.
Right, right. Well, on that too is, if you're gonna go out for a bond, knowing, is the fire department going out for a bond? Is Park and Rec going out for a bond all at the same time? So instead of fighting each other for local funds, maybe, you have an opportunity to team up with each other. So historic buildings, as I was saying in the introduction, it's a way for the State Historic Preservation Office to get an inventory of what are potentially historic or what they call eligible buildings in the community. You already have Brothers, that's locally listed. It did have a National Register nomination written for it, and it was never submitted. And then Pioneer Complex obviously has some very historically, I would say, very intact, historically, I'm drawing a blank on my own words. Significant, that'll work. Buildings, as does Palview. And so we just do an inventory of those. We provide a couple page information to the state, and we check a box that says, we believe, the funny thing is, to be eligible, you only have to be 50 years or older. Well, not us, just our buildings. It's really not that old, is it? Right? So 50 years or older, and then maintain its historic integrity, or be in a way that if there was a hokey addition that was put on likely in the 70s and 80s, that could be removed and its bones are still there. So we make that determination, we submit photos of it, and then that goes into their record. There's always an option of going through the path as maybe some of your predecessors did with the Brothers School, and looking at doing a National Register nomination and then going through that process too. But these don't put them on the list, it's just puts them on their inventory list. So it's a nice, again, kind of like that collaboration with local government. The state is doing that process. They're collaborating at their own level through this process too.
So we've used educational adequacy, the word educational adequacy. And this is what ODE is requiring. They gave us these categories for consideration, and that's as far as it went. We are K-12 designers. We've been doing K-12 in the Northwest for over 65 years. Not us individually, even not me. So, yeah. So what we're doing, and we've already met with, and we'll show you, we've Crooked River and the high school. And so it's a process where we ask a cadre of teachers and administrators these key questions about technology. Tell us about how the technology serves your teaching and learning objectives. Is it robust? Does it need improvement? Supervision and security, unfortunately, that's a really important element to all schools now. Passive security, active security, access controls, instructional aids. Is there enough space for teachers to store their material? That's a rhetorical question. Are there enough spaces so the students can really show their work? And how are the furnishings? And so that's really giving us a score. I'm going to get to how we score. Adequacy, physical characters. What's the look and feel of the learning environment? The learning environment is heating, ventilating, lighting. What are the categories on there? But it's those physical pieces. Natural ventilation, daylighting, smells in this building. And then lastly, it's the relationship of spaces. How far is the bus parking from the furthest student? How far is the cafeteria? Is it centrally located? So they want us to generate some sort of observation of adequacy for each of these schools. And so we made it very tough on your teachers. We gave them a scoring matrix of adequate or inadequate, and they forced us to give something in the middle. So we have a 2 is adequate, a 0 is inadequate, and then 1 is marginally adequate. Any more than that, we're just talking about just variations on adequacy. I don't know. It's yes or no, but this middle ground helps because teachers are notoriously effective at making things work. So that's why when they're making it work and it's okay, they go to that one. So we're going to show you the results of those studies once we complete it. But these are the pieces that go into the educational adequacy requirements for the Awesome grant. Oregon's school capital improvement match. Always have to stop and think about that.
Yeah, and then what do you think? Did you guys, it was okay doing this educational adequacy, you read that? Well,
Good.
that's right. So as I was saying, the long range facility plan is a 10-year outlook on the facilities, what we want to get out of it. It's, much like the facility assessment itself, it's a baseline, right? This is our baseline information. We also go through the process of prioritizing, right? We need to know, okay, if you get $8,000, you do a $4,000 and bond and you get a matching from the state. What are you going to do with that money? How are you prioritizing it? What are your list of projects? What are your list of projects if you get more than that, right? And then we come up with this plan. It's a conceptual plan. We draft it up, and of course, then we finalize it. And as Doug mentioned, then we present it to the school board and we send it off to ODE. So that's the process, where we're going today, tomorrow, in the future. Not a very far future.
Yeah.
It's only 10 years out.
It's only 10 years. So really we start with that because unfortunately, this is a lot of information that we're going to give you tonight. And then next time there's a lot of information before we get into the heavy lifting. One of the goals was to qualify for the Awesome grant, and to qualify, we've got to provide information on all of these. So we're conducting the interviews and we're going to share this information to you because it should influence or it should impact some of your decision-making process. So that's why we go through and tell you, this is what you're going to see because this is what ODE wants.
Bear with us. Lots of talking tonight, but lots of good information that, like I said, gets that ball rolling so that we can start making good progress and good plan down the road.
Yeah. This is the part that that really is the heavy lifting. And this is where you begin to tell us what a conceptual plan looks like. We're going to facilitate the process to give you the information, but you can see this has a lot of steps, and you don't do it your first night. You don't make a decision the second night and voila, you're done. It is a process, but all those other elements have to be met first. So we are going to go through the facilities assessment tonight and go building by building. These are the Cliff Notes versions.
Cliff Notes, yes, yes.
You
So
have
there's a lot of information in there. We're just pulling out kind of the highlights.
So there's about 100 pages in that report. The entire report is 300. What you're not getting are the worksheets from that. If we printed them out, they would be 11 by 17. I'm going to explain how those work. We hope. So
Go for it.
this one just says we were here in January and we published the report in March. Okay.
That's all it says.
Okay. All right. Math teacher. Who's a math teacher? There you go. Okay. At one time. Okay. This is the fun part. Then you're the only one that's going to have fun. Okay. Now it's really, really important. Heidi mentioned these budget models created by Oregon Department of Education. This is based on some estimating budget model creation by a firm based in Oregon, but is an international firm, and they create price indexes for about 250 elements within a building. They give us a spreadsheet, 11 by 17 spreadsheet with columns and columns and columns of systems that we look at. They are observable systems. We do not go into any testing and inspections. We do triage to say, you need to go look at this. This is something that needs to be investigated a little bit further. but we're going to explain how it works, okay? So the spreadsheet has a cost model. We don't figure the costs. We plug in that we create the answers. ODE creates the spreadsheet creates the cost. This is how it works. I'm going to give you an example. First off, I'm sorry, it's building area times the system in that building. So it's what percentage of the total building it has this system. So then percentage of the system that needs improvements times a cost per square foot for repair. It's simple math, but it takes certified assessors on site to kind of look at this. So the first one, I want to give you an example. So if there was a school and it was 20,000 square feet and we were doing an evaluation on the roof, how do we do that? Well, it's a single story building. That's 20,000 square feet of roof. Okay. The roofing system, single story, 100%. It has a built up roof and it has a metal roof. But the metal roof is only 10% of the total. So, okay, excuse me, it's all metal roof and only 10% is failing. So that's 10% of the roof. It's 100% of the building. Got it? Once we get that into ODE generates a cost for repair of a metal roof. And it uses that square footage to generate a cost, and that goes over into a column that sums down at the bottom. So Heidi referred to the facility condition index. More math. We're going to explain how an FCI works. It's real hard. It's the cost of repairs compared to the cost of replacement. ODE provides the cost for the repair that I just explained. They also give the cost of replacement. And the replacement is about 9 items, and it describes an elementary school, middle school, high school, administration. It runs down generic types of school buildings and gives us this cost per square foot. And we know the square footage of the building. Cost that they say is new construction times the cost square footage, boom. That's the cost of replacement. So the process is to compare the cost to repair to the cost of replacement. It's a percentage. They call it the facility condition index. They didn't make it up. NACUBO, National Association of College and University Business Officials, came up with this idea back in 1991. Is there a hospital administrator? Okay. Hospitals use this this data because they keep up with they've got a capital improvement budget all the time to keep their buildings up to date and fixed or repaired. And so every 2 years, typically, they do a facility condition index and they go through and identify those systems that need to be replaced. And they do it by compare it to the cost of replacement. And by NACUBO standards, anything over like a 20 or 25% means you need a major improvement to your building. That doesn't apply for Oregon schools. We took it off. We used to have that written down there, but it's just too low. We have done very few schools in the state of Oregon that are outside of 10 years old that exceed that 20 to 25% or that 20 to 25 facility condition index. This is what ODE requests. Okay, more math. So how do they come up with these costs? We've got this cost, Dave. This is really important so you understand where do these numbers come from? So they come up with a cost for repair. That's great, but we're going to show you how it gets inflated. So here's this, let's say we came up with $1 million worth of repairs, okay? Next, the inflation rate is 14%. You go, wait a minute. How can 14% be the inflation rate? Down here is the explanation. They estimate they're using current inflation rate of about 5.6. ODE updates the spreadsheet every year. We just got the new spreadsheet about 2 weeks ago. But they were using a 5.6 per year. Here's how they get to 30 months. You assume you're doing the process now, and a year from now might be the right timeline for passing a bond. Okay? Next, after you pass the bond, construction schedule is about 3 years. That's rough. You can do it a lot, but from the time you start planning it to the time you occupy, 3 years is a good conservative number. You can reflect on your own process that went pretty quickly, but so half of 1.5 years, 18 months, you go, why did midpoint of construction? Contractors who bid jobs, they bid the inflation to the midpoint of construction. So in the beginning of the job, they're using all of the inflation. By the time you get to the end of the job, it all balances out. So 30 months at 5.6 per year is the inflation. And so on that $1 million that you came up with, it's $140,000 of inflation. So now you've got a project cost of 1.140. Great. Well, wait a minute. You're not done. Next, I'm going to show you is this development cost. What's a development cost? What is that? Well, this is what ODE listed out at 38%. Design fees, got to have architects and engineers. School district hired construction specialists. Commissioning, that's to make sure the heating and ventilating systems work properly as designed. Envelope consultant, that makes sure the buildings don't leak, they consult. And cost estimators. These are direct hires by the school district. Oregon solar requirement, 1.5% of total construction budget. Permits and land use. Land use can get very expensive. I got land use twice. Boundary and topo surveys. Those have to be done in most cases, unless you just have current data. Geotechnical investigation, determine what the load requirements are for your structure. The bond companies do get a cut. So that's in this. The bond issuance cost is a cost to the school district. Program management is pretty common across the state. This is where an owner's clerk of the works or an owner's representative that is full-time on the job. Leland is really, really busy. You can't really ask him to run a bunch of construction projects, although he probably did it last time. But furnishings, if it's new square footage, need some new furniture. And then last, since we're talking 30 months before you're going to really get a school, you got to carry a contingency of 15%. These are not requirements. This is the model they use to generate a development cost index of 38%. I know this is tedious, but you need to know where these numbers are coming from. So we started out with $1 million, but wait a minute, it's now 1.573. That is what it's going to cost to do the entire project using ODE's budget model. We encourage all of the school districts with whom we work. This is great information, but things change so quickly that once you decide on this master plan, you do take your information and drill down on really developing the final elements to a bond title as to really what you need based on current construction indexes. And really, even there's some variables, and maybe you might do in some construction type that might be cheaper than the more models that ODE has. So, okay, sorry about that. It's important that you know where all this comes from. This is the list of all of the schools that we've observed and toured and put into the database. As Heidi mentioned, it's mechanical, electrical, plumbing, civil. There's like 2 or 3 questions on structural, and that's just if we see some cracking. Like I said, it's triage. We identify it, we report it to the school district, and they hire a structural engineer to really drill down on a specific problem. But This is what the chart, we put all this together so you can see all your buildings. There's one other building, it was the Head Start, what's the building next to the maintenance facility? We've got to come. School health, all right. Got to come back and do that.
The other thing that you might mention is how you address modulars.
Thank you, Doug, you're right. Oregon Department of Education tells us not to look at modulars because they're not permanent structures. That's a joke. No, they really do. We're not, because if you've got a modular that needs repair, you just replace it. I mean, I'm not being glib, but we do not review modular buildings. We do.
Modules in place in Southview that are not included in the replacement budget for the repair costs. And same with the 2 modulars at the
Exactly. Modular buildings that come out in sections you build, those are included, but you don't have any of those. Thank you, Doug. All right, so we're going to go through each one of these. Good news, the fun's coming. We're going to look at each building. We've got given you cliff notes. These numbers down here, if you were to replace all your schools, the spreadsheet says $276 million. That's to replace them all, okay? The sum of all of the repairs identified is 60 million. We have not worked with a school district yet that said, oh, thank you, that's the number, great, let's go, we're done. No. These are evaluated based on contemporary schools compared to contemporary schools. You will see in a lot of these, in your older schools, the data and communication systems are inadequate. Distribution panels are outdated. There's not great communication. There's not great access controls. I mean, that's one of the things that is built into a contemporary school. This school has many of those elements, but even since this was built, they've upgraded and changed the requirements from that. It's like the fire alarm system has to have a voice and communication. So you see a lot of that. So do not be staggered by this number. We've never seen a school district do all that work. It's just too much.
So when we started the process in 2012, it ended up with us building Orange Butte Elementary. The number they gave us for repairs at that time was 43 million. And it did not have the same escalators in it that this number does. If you take those escalators out, it comes back pretty close to the $40 million. Now, it's different repairs than what we looked at then, because we did a lot of those. And Leland's team has been knocking things off that list very regularly. But time is an enemy of roofs and boilers and everything else.
So we are going to tag team these, and Doug is spot on. This information is very valuable to you. 40 million, how many years ago? 12 years ago? This is not surprising. Yeah, escalating it from 10, 12 years ago, 6 million, okay. So we're going to go through each one of these. This is a chart that we create to show you, if you wanted to look at just all your schools all at the same time, this is a little bar chart that shows you which schools need the most. And these are in dollars, not percentages. Oh, sorry. I did one before I leave this one. This is the FCI. So this is the relationship of cost to repair compared to cost of replace. And so when you're looking at your big numbers, you know, the stadium is at like 85%. What's next? 52 for Steen's Pillar. Is it, what's the
Pioneer North. It's the one on 3rd Street.
Yes, I'm trying to get the name right. You know, Pillar. All right, Steen's Pillar. Anybody? No. Hemingway Pillar. Okay. Let's see. 52% on Steens Pillar, and 40% Crooked River. So you can see 47 at the Pioneer Gym. So these are good indicators of kind of what's their condition relative to the new construction costs. So this one I like because you can kind of look at a glance, and the colors help out. And your exterior shell on these, now if you can read the text below, we'd have some. Let's see, which one? So I can't even read these. That's Crooked River.
It is in your book, though.
Yeah, it's in your book. Great. No, it's what we dropped in there. Okay. Okay, Crooked River. What's this one? Middle school. Okay. Not real surprise. Okay. And then on utilities and services, I'm sorry, I didn't do that for you. Substructure is the structure. Site work is obvious. Utilities and services is your heating, ventilating, all those electrical, mechanical systems. Interior finishes are self-explained. Exterior shell, okay. Everything except utilities and services needs a little bit of explanation. But you can see, again, what's this one? The high school. It's got some utility issues, although we did take some off when we were scrubbing the numbers again. All right. All right, so we're going to go school by school. And that gives me a chance to get a drink, and Heidi's up.
You getting that
Yeah, I'm just trying to max. I got a request to try to maximize.
to see
if
it a
I
little bit
could,
bigger?
from-
So Barnesview, I apologize. I think I said we're not going through that report, and that's basically the whole basis of our meeting, is going through that report. I think I remember that coming out of my mouth, so sorry about that. So Barnesview Elementary School, we were happy to see that that building is holding up well. We do know that there are some landscape issues out there with trees that perhaps weren't specified correctly, or not quite sure actually what's happening with those trees, but we have some dying trees out there. The majority of repair costs at Barnes Butte are in just the shell and looking at just that some things are aging. And I'm trying to think, I know we had some windows in there. We've already pulled the windows out. I'm trying to think what else was in the shell off the top of my head. It's been a couple weeks since I've looked at the Barnes Butte, but that was the biggest item. The rest of them, like you see, are all pretty minor. We do have some costs in the site. And again, that's going back to some landscape issues, as well as where we're seeing that perhaps the drainage, the grading wasn't done as well as it could have been, or things have pushed and pulled over the time. So some grading areas and some additional paving that was requested in order to kind of mitigate some of the playground traffic dirt that's coming in and out of the school. So not really a repair item, but more of an aesthetic item. So overall, Barnes Butte is doing really well. Like Richard noted, there's some systems that were, top of the class of what they were supposed to be like in 2015, and already they've been outdated. So some of the systems are looking like they're starting to age, and that's what's put in here by our engineers. They list those things out individually, like the fire alarm system. I can't remember if Barnes Butte has the voice override in it or not. And ready, I'm like trying to dance around Barnes Butte a little bit longer to give you time to maximize that.
I'm gonna just do this real quick. So try to accommodate those that are.
So one comment that the PLR, when we went through this as a board, is that BLR or Barnes Butte Elementary is kind of the standard they use for what our other facilities need to be. So you're going to see that every parking lot in Barnes Butte has drainage. Every parking lot in Barnes Butte is paved. The sidewalks are all fresh concrete. So when they start talking about the large amount of money that's needed in Paulina, well, they're going to put a fire, they will recommend a fire system in Paulina, right? They will recommend paved parking lots in Paulina. The fire system won't work too good because our well only puts out like 40 or 50 gallons a minute. So, but that is the standard that 50 some million dollars would buy us. Now, our job as a board, your job as a long range facilities committee is as we go through here is to understand that's in here. That's not something that we need to ask the voters for, because we are not going to put a fire system in Paulina that puts out 40 gallons a minute.
Yes, so essentially what ODE is saying is we're looking at, what is the standard for education today? And so we're comparing it to that. So your newest facility is Barnes Butte. So basically that's a great analogy. When we're looking at all the rest of them, we're kind of comparing it to Barnes Butte with already looking at, technology changes every minute, right? So we're looking at what is up and coming. So the bar isn't like saying we're going to have the most expensive school with marble floors and chandeliers. That's not the bar that ODE has set. It's a realistic expectation of what a standard school and facility should have for students for good learning environments. So
actually, let's go back for Crooked River.
okay, all right, you're up.
All right, Crooked
Does
River.
that make sense on how we're kind of analyzing these and what we're looking at as far as, really when we're doing our assessments, we're, like Richard was saying, we're looking at a roof structure. What percentage of that roof needs to be repaired? When we're looking at it for what we see in our professional opinion, we would come in a room like this and say, how many ceiling tiles are damaged? What type of ceiling is it? Our electrical engineer comes in here and looks, are these LED lights? Because that's the new standard. If they're not, then they need to be replaced. So those are kind of setting those bars. Is furniture torn and damaged? And kind of other examples are, your flooring out there, the floor is showing some wear, the tiles are starting to pull apart. So we're looking at all of those types of elements. As well as, the standard is parking lots should be paved. Schools should have paved sidewalks to get students safely to the school. Good bus drop-off lanes, things like that.
All right, Crooked River, you're going to understand this really well, because the things that jump off the page are the 1990s overbuild roof. In the 60s, that was post-World War II, where they were needing to build lots of schools for all of us baby boomers. Great, simple construction, flat roofs, have this great technology, keep the rain out. No, it doesn't work. So in 1990s, the school district was fed up with the leakage, and they built over a roof, a low slope roof over the top of that. Unfortunately, that is failing as well. There are some mechanical systems that are in between the original roof and the new roof. What we really suggest is that you take both of those roofs off and put tapered insulation on the roof so that you get positive drainage, and use a more a contemporary roof, whether it's a membrane roof and more crickets. But it really doesn't matter so much what we're advocating as much as this takes off that roof and takes off the lower roof. The metal roof that was used on it is a flat seam, and those seams can open up with freeze thaw, and there's fasteners through the roof. And so It's just not a great roof for a low slope. So that's what that number is about. There's some cosmetic upgrades where these the ceilings or the roof is still leaking, so you've got some stained tiles. Gym floor is ready to be refinished. Switchboard, original equipment, a switchboard all needs to be replaced. It's 60 years old. And you use a lot more power. That's what's interesting when you start looking at the educational adequacy. We talk about power. And at this school, I believe there's not enough power outlets to run the programs that they've got. No fire protection built before sprinkler systems were required. So you can see these items do tend to drive up the number. There's a lot of parking issues, site parking issues. And there's lots of head nodding, lots of gravel. Yeah. So anyway, our engineer identified a lot of those, and then the current law with the Americans Disability Act requires access into the building number places. So roof, interior finishes that are being damaged by the leakage, and then a lot of site improvements, and then just upgrading the electrical system. Questions about Crooked River Elementary School? Oh, thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Oh,
What is the cause of the roof failing? And is that something that the developer, builder, contractor that put it in is responsible for? Because just replacing a roof because it's not functioning may not be our responsibility anyway.
it is 31 years old, that roof, so it's past its useful life. It is not a roof that we would suggest today because it is designed for a steeper pitched roof. For something that shallow, you should use a standing seam roof where it interlocks, and it's just a better roof, better metal roof. So it is 31 years old, and that is pretty much what you should expect. More questions? Thank you. All right. The middle school, I had the great pleasure of walking through that one as well. I know there's a lot of emphasis on the middle school. Again, same vintage as Crooked River down the street, to surprise. Leaking metal roof. Now this goes, and you're going to have the same question. This roof has exposed fasteners, and it has lap joints that go between, the panels. Did I hit something else? I did. There we go. So it has leaks in a lot of places. It has leaks at valleys, and those leaks show up in stained ceiling tiles. That roof is old as well, and has passed its life expectancy. So the roof replacement there is different in that we're not saying tear off. It's a steeper pitched roof, so we're saying replace that roof. Interior cosmetic upgrade, same issue. There's some of the leaking is getting through. There's some exterior doors, especially, and I always get turned around. So this side, is this west? South. Okay, the south side, yeah. The south side is on the gym side. There's a lot of exposure. Get a lot of stores coming up from the south and the west, and so the doors are all sticking, and they've kind of rusted, not shut. Built pre Americans with Disability Act, so the band room is not accessible to anybody with a disability or that's in a wheelchair. Electrical panels, again, the vintage of this building, 40% of the sub panels, no centralized lighting. This is one of those things that new schools have, so that you can turn out all the lights at once, or you can have motion sensors. Just the lighting technology I'm sure that the school district is replacing the lamps with higher efficient lamps, but the systems that control the switching of those. Addressable alarm, replacing one of the boilers, or is it both boilers? 3 boilers, there you go. Fire protection, fire life safety. State fire marshal.
Not required.
It is now, though.
I would not, and I expect.
Okay.
I would not make them do that.
Okay.
It'd be great to have it.
Can you make that comment?
I'm silent. So the piece is inspecting this, and the biggest thing was with me as the deputy state fire marshal, Leland was maintaining the fire separations and things of the building that would not require the sprinkler system. And as long as those things were maintained, we stay in pretty good shape. If you built it new, all different, but still, once again, several things are built by square footage. And if the sprinklers aren't required, they're not required, and we cannot make them go do that retrospective.
So at 8,000, that's the threshold that you have to subdivide firewalls and self-closing doors. And so that's what he's talking about in terms of compartmentalizing the entire school into out there 8,000 square foot increments. But that's where that element comes when the engineer rolls through it. Site repairs again, pedestrian paving, relocation of a transformer to 2nd Street. Leland was kind enough to take an entire day and walk with us. So he was able to give us insight into some details. That's one of them that I'm sure he brought up. Backup generator on site. Is that something you requested, or my engineer is always putting this on there? Yeah. Yeah. And that backup generator is, the backup generator is only for exiting and essential.
So I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the middle school, because it was one of our largest challenges as we tried to keep students in school during the COVID times and to get our students back, because the size of the rooms is, each one of the rooms was originally designed for a certain class. And so you have some classes that are really big and could have fit 30 students during, with 35 square foot per student. And you have some classrooms that were for maybe a less popular class that could only hold like 15 or 16. So as we start talking about the middle school piece, that's important to us. The other thing that we'll ask you to weigh in on and to think about with the middle school is we're at 600, and I think we got to 695 students at one time in the middle school. What is the right size for a middle school in Prineville? And do we need another one? And so the question is, big middle schools can offer all kinds of alternative classes. You can have all kinds of electives. But if you get to small middle schools, you can't. Is the middle school going to grow, or is it going to end up in online and homeschool? So there will be a lot of discussion as we get farther in this process about the middle school, because we, I think, deep down believe that we gave it a polishing out of the last bond, but it needs major work. It was not designed in 1952, they did not have personal computers, and our students were not one-on-one. So, Heidi.
All right, next we're going to talk about this one. So we do have a couple drainage issues on the roof. Some Leland's already been addressing and mitigating. There are some others, and if you ask about the cause of it, without really getting up there and seeing it eye to eye to know what the cause is, a lot of it could just be what's happening with roof drainage, valley flashing, as well as the freeze thaw process. It could be ice damming that's causing some of these issues. Majority of them are in the valleys of the roof. Finished materials, as I was giving in our example, this room looks fantastic, right? It's been recently updated, but you go out in the hallway, there's wear and tear on the vinyl tile. There's wear and tear on all of the facilities and the finishes throughout. Leland's updating some of the wainscoting throughout the schools. So some things that we had noted originally, we've already been pulling out of our report. And the bigger ticket item. Yeah, I can't find that button. There we go. Bigger ticket item are the services. So the electrical distribution panels.
Sub-distribution panels, all installed.
Right, thank you. And then I can't find the button. Okay, so we're at almost, about 5.5 million on services. And again, those numbers seem so high. You're like, the school's not that old. I still think 1996, it's not that long ago, but it relatively, in the greater picture, no. But when you think about how schools are used and wear and tear, we are at kind of the lifespan of a lot of these services in this building. And then site work is our other big ticket item here. And that's because our trees, a lot of the trees out in the parking lot are outgrowing the small little islands that were made for them. And then some other landscape concerns around the building as far as safety and security, but also, root damage that is being caused by some of those. Again, like our engineer always puts, add a backup generator. If we're comparing apples to apples throughout the state, schools should have backup generators for that limited service for egress and everything else. There was at this school one issue where we did have to come back and bring our structural engineer back in. Leland and his crew had found an issue on the second floor where the floor structure was kind of pulling away from the walls. And so that is something that, we note and we bring our structural engineer back out to look at. And so this does include in this shell number are some of those costs for mitigating of that. I don't believe it includes all of the costs though, because that's a more recent number that we got from them as far as what it takes to repair that issue. It turned out, we can just put an angle iron in an angle like a L bracket underneath the floor and bolt it back together. And cause of it, don't know specifically without having their report. I'm not going to try to quote our structural engineer on what they're saying the cause of it is, but at least they were able to come up with a fairly simple solution to mitigate that problem. Any questions on the high school? Pretty straightforward. Let's see. So then we're going to jump over to the Pioneer Complex and go through all of the facilities except for the health clinic, right? I do need to schedule to come back out and look at where we have some very old structures there, and they've been very well maintained. A lot of fluctuations of the use of this building on the north side, and really enjoy seeing it coming back into use this year. So kudos to all of you who helped get that going in, take a storage facility and turn it back into an elementary school. It was fun to see the life and the kids back in there again. So with the age of the building, obviously we have some ADA issues. We have some ADA ramps and access that have been added to it. The new ramps on both the south and the north on the front are ADA compliant. Those are great, but some of the older ramps that were put on, I don't know the year when those were put on, but at the back of both of those buildings are not compliant to today's ADA code. They're close, but they get you there, right? They get you there, but and then big things for these buildings, we've got a centralized boiler system that is servicing the buildings. It's in the separate boiler room. So all of them are going to have some big numbers under services right here for replacing boiler systems. And ideally, we're putting in individual systems into each facility. Did I get that right, Lynn? That is the goal for these. Still trying to replace light fixtures, as I mentioned in kind of my example. We're looking at replacing the fluorescent light fixtures with LED light fixtures, a centralized lighting control system. And then what I really didn't like is these guys said they didn't like the trees along Fairview. Oh, come on, but they are starting to overgrow that parkway area there and have some impact on the foundations of the buildings. No impact at this stage, but as they keep growing, because they are trees that will keep growing, they're not kind of a street tree per se that is made to just grow to a certain height. So they were concerned about the root structures of those trees along there. And then the thing I hate talking about, because I'm a preservationist, is replacing windows. So there are ODE standard is if you have anything with single pane windows, they need to be replaced. As a preservationist, I say there are many options to replacing windows, especially windows of pretty good quality that were here. So outdoor storm windows, there are indoor storm windows. There are different options as far as providing that level of safety is their biggest thing. And then the energy efficiency that goes along with a single pane window. So did I miss anything on that one?
I'm studying up on the next.
Oh, what? Okay, so similarly, will be South Pioneer, but real quick, we did look at the boiler room. We didn't do a full assessment of the building itself as far as the inside finishes and everything else, but looking at the exterior, it does have some, it needs some love on the exterior. So if the boilers were going to be maintained in that building, that this structure would need some help on the envelope. And then the services itself is a bigger ticket number. This building has gotten a new life, right? They are using it for some, you guys say, it's the break room, right, for the staff.
So it's a staff break room in the district storage.
Right. Unofficial, that is off the record. I didn't note it in the report. Odie, you won't know that either. It's a very, if you haven't been in there, I was really blown away. It was like 2 old locker rooms that you step down to, and really bizarre floor plan of that building. Okay, so moving south to the gymnasium. Beautiful example of a Quonset hut that has perhaps a 50s or 60s addition added onto the front of it. It's actually in really good shape, except for the fact that the membrane roof is at the end of its lifespan, showing some wear and tear on that and needing to be replaced relatively soon. Again, it has single pane windows. The easy thing with buildings of this area, they didn't have divided lights and they're all fixed pane, so very easy to replace those windows, as opposed to at the more historic building that has the big double hung windows with divided light windows. Those are a little bit harder. They do make some good replacements, so ADA compliance is a little iffy. We do have a ramp on the side. We do have a stair on the side. Again, they meet the desired need as far as getting somebody in a wheelchair into the building, but they are not compliant with today's ADA standards, and those change. The state adopts different things from the ADA, and we just got a new version. So that's always being updated. Electrical panels, low voltage, were mechanical systems. We already talked about the boilers. So similar story for the rest of the things, but the only other thing on the site is, again, that pedestrian connection. So making sure we have a graded paved sidewalk that's ADA compliant to connect all the buildings. So that's lacking in this one right now too. Functions well. Beautiful remodel, update of the restrooms, I might say, Leland. And then South Pioneer, again, love to see the updates that have been coming over the years. Obviously, we're a little biased to your most recent remodel. I think it's lovely. It's working really well for the interior, although some of those finishes are seeing some wear and tear. But metal roof, I didn't mention at Pioneer North, the metal roofs are pretty much at the end of their lifespan on these buildings as well. The biggest issue with the roofs at this point is the fact that they don't have positive drainage around all the parapets. So the big parapets at each of the entries, so that you are getting a lot of water damage that's seeping through and causing that spalling on the outside of the building. You're also seeing a lot of water damage, what we call the cheek walls, those big concrete blocks, which are not at the two main entrances anymore. Well, there's one left on the front. But at the side entrances, you'll see all the concrete spalling. Well, a lot of that is because it gets so much water from the sprinklers. Water has to go somewhere, and it's coming in, freeze thaw, it's coming back out.
So some of the electrical is multiple distribution panels. There's no more capacity in at their end of the useful life. Low voltage, the fire alarm doesn't have voicing back, and then the mechanical system is served by the boiler house, and those are the boilers that need to be replaced. So the radiators in the school run over to the boiler house, and there's no natural ventilation, so all the air that's inside the building is great. You can warm it up, but there's no circulation of the air coming up.
Right, no mechanical ventilation.
Yep.
Right. We did find one we don't have it in this picture, but another item that's in this shell is the connection of the kitchen addition on the back side of the building where it connects in. There is some roof drainage issues at that connection, and it's causing some interior damage on the inside. I believe that photo is in the report there, but that is something that would be mitigated with a roof replacement. And I think I left the maintenance building till the end. So at this point, this is the end of the Pioneer Complex West Side presentation. Any questions on those three buildings at the Pioneer Complex? Nothing surprising. That's kind of good, I think, right? All right, how about Paulina? Have you guys all been out to Paulina? It was many years since I've been out to Paulina. Paulina is amazing in the fact that it's housing this school and it's still great. Like, kids are using it. It's fantastic. It's architecturally maybe not the most beautiful thing unless you're a designer from the 50s, 40s and 50s, then they would probably kill me for saying that, but it doesn't meet my aesthetic value, and which has no merit of any of this, but that's just mentioning that. We did do that gymnasium multi-purpose room addition in 1970, or I'm sorry, the multi-purpose room addition, and then the gymnasium addition in that last bond cycle. So at least the school has been getting some upgrades, which is great. I was super surprised to see how well this little building is intact, and it has basically no issues to it. So I know, kudos to that guy over there. I even told him when we were out there, I'm like, Leland, this is so impressive. And then I was even more blown away when we went out to Brothers. So you guys need to give your maintenance man over here like some major kudos because he is doing wonders for your school district. You can, tip me later for saying that. But similarly to our other buildings of older ages, panel boards need to be replaced, centralized lighting system, as we talked about, we were going to see that in all of them, just like the generator. I did try to get a definitive location on those exterior lights and couldn't remember which lights on the site were the ones that needed to be replaced. So okay, so you replace the ones out here, right? Yeah, so the ones on the back side, that makes sense. And and then on the site work, as Doug was saying, when we're comparing apples to apples, we have all gravel out here. Even the ADA spot might have been paved at one time. It's basically gravel drive, gravel bus drop off, no sidewalks to the school. Not that there's any sidewalks in the town to connect to anyway. But that's what we have to rate it to, right? So pretty good condition. As Richard mentioned before, we don't assess the modulars in the back. Modulars were in pretty good shape though, from what we saw. So that was good. Any questions on Paulina?
What about the old?
Oh, because the other buildings, yeah, there are other buildings on the property. Yep. Leland said, stay out. So then we went over to Brothers, and I had the benefit of reading the National Register nomination for the Brothers Schoolhouse. I was on the Deschutes County Landmarks Commission for many years, so that's all I thought was there. So when I drove into the parking lot at Brothers, I was like, oh my gosh, there's this whole building back there. I never knew that was there. So I thought I was coming out to assess a little old schoolhouse, but we were assessing this building instead. On this one, shell is great. It's in wonderful condition, as you would hope from, 1982. Actually, that's pretty old, right?
That building was built since the mid-90s.
Did we? I might have updated that. The old
school, the gym, or the 1982.
Okay.
1928. But that's new, like I said, early 90s.
I might have updated that already in that report that you guys have. Did I already caught that? Okay. Yeah, so still, it's in really good shape. I mean, it's sitting out right in the middle of kind of nowhere, except if you live in Brothers. I apologize if that was rude. But it's in great condition. Again, kudos to Leland for keeping these buildings up really well, which means, you've got an adequate mechanical system in there and you're doing great snow melt. You do have a very appropriate standing seam metal roof on this building. So you're going to see that this one is going to maintain its integrity for the lifespan, as opposed to some of these other metal roofs that perhaps aren't holding up as well. Just not the appropriate roof for the building. On the outside, there are some damage to the sidewalks. We're in Central Oregon. We use snow melt as best as we can. We try to get the stuff that doesn't degrade, it's going to degrade. So there are some damages to the sidewalks, but majority of your costs over here are in the systems that are just coming to the point of being at the end of their useful lives. So that's what they know. Our engineers just report on that and say, again, as Richard said in the beginning, we're not testing systems. So by all means, there are ways to test systems and rebalance systems and do repairs to systems. This point of this report is just looking at what's the lifespan of these typical systems and are they at the end of their life. But basically everything is in pretty good condition with some minor, grading of ADA and spalling of the concrete, like I said, and of course, a backup generator. We couldn't go through a building without a backup generator. We did look at the gymnasium, which is actually in really good condition. So that was fun to go into that building and see that. And then we did walk through the historic school as well. Encourage you to keep some ventilation going in that building and some ongoing maintenance on the outside, so we don't get to a point where it's going to be dilapidated and be kind of demolition by neglect. So there does still need some love. Any questions out there, brothers, before I turn it over to Richard to go through?
Hillview Community School, the main building. The architecturally built in 1930, significant, not real surprising. There's some ADA issues, upgrading with with hardware, ADA compliant, some refinishing of the bleachers. The panel boards are the same vintage, a lot of random. There's no more capacity reaching the end of their useful life. There's not a replacing the PA and bell system. Not an addressable fire alarm. None of these are real surprising. The boiler is past its expected life, and it is an fuel oil boiler. And the piping runs through the attic space, and it does freeze on occasion. No mechanical ventilation, so you have to open the windows. Fire protection. Then some site improvements. They do have a pretty good system set up. There's gravel like some of your other schools. One of the ongoing discussions is about the the drain field and the septic tank that is built in the south part of the property. Is my orientation right? Okay. That's up the hill a little bit, so it means it's not downhill from the building. So it is reached its capacity, and there's some issues that, of course, they'd like that resolved, but that's a big deal. Irrigation for the south field, but they love that building and they make it work. Oh, the windows are all steel windows, probably should be replaced to be more energy efficient. We have the cafeteria as a separate building, obviously. Built in 1990, moderate repairs. They do, I understand the community runs the kitchen. It's a great supplemental place to the school itself, because as you know, they have a modular field. They use them as classrooms. They have their media center in one of those. They have ongoing projects to put ramps and access points. They're very complimentary of the relationship with the school district and really helping them out to to continue using that school. Transportation. Yeah. I'm sorry, were there any questions about how you community?
So Steve, how many classrooms are actually in the?
So the question was, how many rooms are in the building?
Four classrooms in the building.
So you've got about eight in the modulars.
Well, the middle school bounces around between 2 or 3, because one of them has a split in the middle, so you can do it that way. You've got, I'm gonna have to think about that one. So 4 in the main building, and then there's I think it's 2 for middle school, and the modulars and everything else is the remainder. How many modulars are there? I don't remember. There's 4.
Counting the double.
Well, one of them's half of it's a library and the other half's a classroom.
So I guess what I'm trying to arrive at is one of the things I see as a need in our district is we need to take a look at Pal Butte. We need to figure out how do we improve the facilities so that it is a great place, not just a great school, which is what Pal Butte Community Charter School has created, but aesthetically, it's a great place to go to school, and that we have something that complements the original brick building instead of a collection of modulars that has been put together over the last 30 years or 40 years.
Yeah.
Anything else on Pal Butte?
Comments, and those are all things that we'll get into as we start developing this long-range facility plan. You know, do you want your kids to continue living and learning in modulars? And like we've said, we make do with what we have, right? And we're always doing that, but is that ideal? Especially with a climate like we have, right? So you're in and out of those. The flip side, the transportation building is actually doing okay on its own over here. The shell is in decent condition. It does have some wear and tear on the outside. Was built before ADA requirements, so that's all I'll say about that. And for the most part, it's pretty good, except it does, you can't tell right here, not this roof, but the main roof is a membrane roof. So it is a pitched roof. It does have a membrane roof on it, which was surprising, which is at the end of its life. It's starting to show some wear and tear. Again, we're not having any significant leaks and damage yet, but just putting it on your radar. And then on the inside, on the services, that's our bigger, well, our big ticket number is the other. But services, again, similarly, we're looking at centralized lighting control systems, the replace the the single phase 3-wire panel boards. And we did have a question that came up. They are not using water to drink. They're not using the running water to drink right now because it hasn't been tested for lead, but Leland's already got that flagged on his list for testing out there. Site it's predominantly a gravel field. So again, when we're comparing apples to apples, we're looking at a gravel field. So site work, especially with the parking for ADA and ADA access to the building, is always a big thing. Fencing around the perimeter site, fencing comes in, especially when we're looking at schools and adequacy of schools, when we're talking about school security, not as big of a concern over here. Of course, you still don't want damage to your buses. You've got some pretty big ticket commodity items at this facility. There is some drainage concerns with some of the areas in the gravel parking lot. Of course, it's gravel, so eventually it does drain, so that kind of fixes itself there. Any questions on maintenance building? The inside is pristine. The staff room upstairs, it's like you could eat off the floor. It was so well maintained. It was really nice. Not that I'm suggesting you eat off the floor. The nutritional warehouse, this one was kind of one of those, it's kind of a building, it's kind of not a building. What do we do? So we did a very minimal assessment of it, and we're just looking at some shell items, like, you know, the roll-up doors are starting to see some wear and tear, the entry doors. We've got a wood frame set of stairs, maybe it has a handrail on one side, and just some minor, you can see some some discoloration of the drywall inside, so maybe there's a roof leak somewhere. But again, it was not a full assessment of that building, but just to give you a kind of a general idea. Oh, you want to do the stadium?
Yes.
Woo, the stadium's the fun one. Let me just do the maintenance real quick.
Oh,
And we'll-
absolutely.
yeah.
Would you please?
Yeah, I'm just gonna do the facilities because we'll end on the big note of the stadium. So the facilities shop, again, as I said, I got to do Pioneer Complex, so here we are back to the Pioneer Complex. If you haven't been by that building, it needs a lot of TLC on the outside, so this is one that, you know, when you're looking at that FCI number, is it worth repairing versus replacing? And maybe relocating if somebody has their say in things. So a lot of envelope issues over here. The shell, the interior, they're doing the best they can. It's really clean, it's well maintained, it's shown a lot of wear and tear in this building. And then services themselves. And Leland, I mean, if you want to talk about your office, you can. I'm trying not to say too many bad things about it for you. So we've got, you know, a little bit of some site issues. The building is, like I said, is in need of envelope repair. Systems inside are at the end of their useful life, and we don't need to get into many details about that one. So Richard, now I'll go back because I think it's better to end on an up note.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Yep. There is a structural assessment that's being done next week, not the 30th. Okay. Not April, March 30th. It's next Monday, so it'll be in May. Built in 1965. The siding on the south and west sides are ready for replacement. Water intrusion on the north exterior wall. The roof, there was a lot of that roof being put in. Now on the underside of the bleacher seating, there's that same roof that over time, since 1975, again, the fasteners are through the surface. It's warped. Those joints that overlap that seal the roof have kind of separated and moved. So you're getting water intrusion into the building itself, the inhabited space below. ADA upgrades outside of the bleachers that you've taken care of, which are great, but concession stand, locker rooms, that whole level, it seems to be lower than it is lower than the parking lot. So trying to get into those spaces is problematic. Hardware, all the plumbing needs to be addressed to be accessible. Grades are higher around the building than finished floor. Panel boards, multiple, and they're all at capacity and past their useful life for electrical. There's a replacement of most of the lights, has already, about 10% of the lights have been replaced. Telephone, internet service cabling is underground. There is an intrusion system, accessible fire alarm, natural gas fired, and then just more gravel paving. And if you start to pave, this is going to be one of the challenges, and Heidi mentioned it very briefly, which is when you start paving these parking lots, you need to start figuring out how you're going to filter that water when it's running off of the parking lot into the grass area. So kind of goes with, if you upgrade the parking lot, then you have to upgrade the drainage systems. So the primary concern is just the structural integrity of the stadium, because when you replace the bleacher seats from the wood to the aluminum, there was some movement in the end walls, and that's because the bleachers were attached to the end walls. So and yes, it has been rectified. So that kind of sums up where we, it's in the volume. It's fairly exhaustive in that there's so many buildings, and like at Pioneer, there were 5 different assessments for each one of those sites. Mention that. So any questions about, and we look forward to your questions next time we get together, when you have a chance to really read this volume and kind of ask the questions. If you can get the questions to us in advance, particularly on the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, that would be very, very helpful to us, so that we could have our engineer weigh in on that. But we're happy to answer those before the next meeting.
So it might be good just because we haven't heard from anybody online. So does anybody who's listening from home have any questions that they want answered? Yep, no problem. Okay, so nobody online. Any other questions from the group? Okay.
Thank you very much. We are getting a little more comfortable with the live and online. So okay. We thought we would give you an update on the educational adequacy. And so we've done Crooked River Elementary School and a representative of the kind of a cross-section of individuals that we're having answer these questions. We appreciate the school district giving us the time to meet with staff. This is a critical piece, and it is one of the hardest to get because teachers are busy. So they're giving us time before school and after school, and we appreciate it. Dr. Johnson and Leland are at these meetings as well. They're doing a great job of just answering questions primarily. When some question comes up, Leland has an answer, or Sarah weighs in on something that is going on in the school district. So they're both very, very helpful resources. The high school, this building again, we probably missed somebody. By the way, if we've missed somebody, you let us know, we will put them on the list. And again, just a quick reminder, core capacity of support programs like music, CT, career tech ed, science, some of those specialty programs. Technology, we take a quick look, supervision and security, instructional aids, physical environment, learning environment, and a relationship of spaces. So those are the factors that go into that. I'm going to show you. We have coming up 2 more, Barnes Butte and then Powell Butte Community School tomorrow afternoon. And then on, is that Tuesday or Monday? Monday, I think. Yeah, it's the 3rd. We'll be there. That's, yes, please. So what's going on here? I thought I had another slide. Is it, it is not advancing. You know, yeah, you know what was wrong before? Forgot to turn it on. Oh, thank you, thank you. You can't see this. That's too bad. But what the reason, the point, you don't need to read this. It's not an eye chart. We just want to show you that we have asked the staff to answer each one of these questions with their score of 2, 1, or 0. And when we're done, we'll have all these populated. We'll come up with score for all of those schools. And it's not a competition. It is so strange when we meet with schools. They think that if they don't speak candidly, that it's a bad reflection on their school. On the contrary, we want to know what's working, what's not working. And as Doug pointed out in the very beginning, the school district wants to know, what can we do to provide a better educational adequacy of the facilities? It's still focusing on facilities, but what can we give the teachers and the students to have a better chance to succeed? So the only purpose was not to read it, was just kind of show you, we touch base with all of them, and we come down here at the bottom And we give them an average, we aggregate it and give an average score. And it'll be interesting to see how close to a 2 are they. And I guarantee you, we've seen most of them in the 2, between 1 and 2. Occasionally we'll hit a school that gets below that line and they've got real issues. So that's something to which to look forward. Okay. We try to be on 2 hours. It is 2 hours right now. So we would like to get some feedback randomly, and we can maybe start, we want to make sure we get those people online. And the purpose of this is give us insight. We've talked for 2 hours. What did you learn that we could build on? What do we need to know that will influence what we come back with you when we come back, and we give you information that you need? So that's really what it's about. We'd like to ask you to share that with us. So is there anybody willing to volunteer? Awesome. And we will record these, write them down, and we will bring them back.
We have a volunteer right.
Did you see anything in our community that was unique to other districts that you have seen around the region or around the state?
Everything. I'm not being glib either. Most fun thing about what we do is every single school. The most fun thing we do is every single school district is different. I'll answer your question now. You have some great programs. I'm impressed with at the high school, the kind of programs that you offer in career tech education was stunning, and the desire to build more programs. So that's just one example. We've only talked to 2 schools. I think you're at the elementary school. They're very happy with the facility if it just didn't leak. So those are kind of 2 anecdotal issues. That being said, your school district is the numbers of the renovation are not as high as we've seen in some other school districts.
I talk to them all the time, so.
We don't intend to answer all these. We just tell us what we need to do.
We have kind of 2 unique schools here in the district, which is Grizzly Mountain Homelink and our Crook County Online Options. So I'm just wanted to make sure that somebody's going to be talking to those schools about their facility needs, because especially with Grizzly Mountain, they're a brand new program. And I think we need to make sure that we're forecasting their needs. And then I can speak to CCOO as far as just, I guess I want to make sure that we're on that list, because we're kind of unique schools, and because we're virtual, we're sometimes forgot that we have facilities too.
Sorry. That's great. Is there an administrator? The way we typically do is talk to the administrator of that program. Okay, well, we could. The question. Okay, the questions are different, but we tailor them to the program. So we think we agree. We would like to do them all. We'd like to get those sooner, and if we could make those part of the educational adequacy, since it is virtual, but we can also tie in, it all always relates back to facilities. So that's what I'm saying, it does tie back to facilities. So there may be that drop-in component that you still need some space to meet one-on-one. So thank you.
You did not address the modulars, and I understand that, but by the same token, the modular, by virtue of having modulars, you have kids being separated from the rest of the school. And I think that we need to have a better understanding of what is necessary so that the kids can all be incorporated into one building rather than split up, such as the Powell Butte School. Because ultimately, I think that's fundamental to the kids' education.
This is my 3rd in a row. I said one to answer questions, but we will take that into account. How we think we can do it is through the educational adequacy, because did you see the, is that still up? Oh, that's all right. It's capacity. That's the first question. And so they say, well, a good example was at Crooked River Elementary School. There was a discussion about special needs is using, is that right? There's one modular. Oh, it's at the high school. Yeah. Thank you. See, right program, wrong school. Sorry. Let's go back one. Oop, I brushed my fingers across the touchpad. Thank you, Jason. So that factors into the capacity, because that's a program that needs some more space. It's special needs, but if you opened up that space, then career tech ed would put somebody. So when we're doing the capacity analysis, we'll identify that there isn't enough space, because ODE only wants you to evaluate where permanent buildings where kids are supposed to be. So we will capture that. Thank you. That's the kind of stuff that we can do.
Any other comments? Okay, who's gonna wrap things up? Doug?
Okay, I want to thank everybody that's here. This was a good meeting, and I'm very pleased with this group that's here and the ones that are online as well. Our next meeting is May 26th. Same place. Any comments? Okay, so May 26th, same place. It's a Wednesday again, online or Zoom. We encourage you to be here. Hopefully, Crook County's state rating on COVID is down a little bit, but please be here. And I think it's, as we get into the educational adequacy, the other thing is you go through the report. If you have questions, right? And you should, please feel free to email. And like I said earlier, Leland, Dr. Johnson, myself, Heather, and we will get those questions to the right people, get them answered, and get those, and then share the question and the response with everybody in the group so that everybody's on board. I know every time I look at this report, I have some questions. I see more things. For instance, the $1.1 million worth of site work at the stadium, right? If that alone makes a big difference in where that RCI factor is for the stadium. So, and that's because when they built it to be ground level and then paved around it, and ground level's now that much too high. Okay. You'll see roofs. Over the course of the time I've been on the board, I was told that a metal roof is a 50-year roof. But the screws, if you drill down, if you put a screw in a piece of metal like we have at the stadium, or like we have at, I believe the roof at middle school, Barnes or Pioneer, or Crooked, those roofs, when you put a screw through them, they have a neoprene washer that holds that seals around the screw. And what happens is over time, the neoprene fails before the roof fails. And some of the roofs have actually been re-screwed several times with longer screws, and there's a lot of tricks to get that 50 years, but we got 50-year roofs. The other thing you're going to see a lot of in that report is boilers. And we have boilers that go back to the 1930s. Well, from an efficiency standpoint alone, we can improve, right? And you look at the age of our boilers at Pioneer or the 1930s, then we go to the high school. There's 3 of them that are 1952. You go to Crooked River, and those boilers are 1960s. So those are 60, 70-year-old pieces of equipment. And people laugh at me because I like old 2-cylinder John Deere tractors. Mine are modern compared to these boilers. So just things to think about as we start talking about it. The other thing that you're going to hear about is ventilation. The district's doing some work on ventilation now, but it's one thing to heat a building. It's another thing to have adequate ventilation to things moving through the building and out, hopefully. So especially during COVID times. And then the third thing that you're going to hear some about as we talk about adequacy, we're going to have a month or 6, how long is our summer school this year, Dr. Johnson? So we've got basically 5.5 weeks of summer school. Well, when you go into a brand new school like Barnes Butte that does not have air conditioning for 5.5 weeks, in June and July, that is not going to be a fun experience. And so the district is currently working on that building to add the air conditioning we couldn't afford back back when it was originally built. Right. And it'll be near capacity during the summer. Okay, so the district is trying to address things, and we're fortunate because Dr. Yeka, when he was here, Dr. Johnson have done a good job of managing our district and keeping us to where we can address maintenance issues as we go. So thank you both. And with that, we'll call the meeting adjourned. See you May 26, 5:30.